Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. Let's talk gold foliage plants. So this video is going to start here in Loxley, Alabama and finish up at my home when I get back to the house. A lot of the pieces I wanted to talk about are in the nursery that I'm in here in Loxley. Gold foliage plants are, you know how much I love them if you've watched my channel for any length of time, especially ones that will take part shade or shade conditions, because they'll really brighten dark spaces. This gold foliage lasts a lot longer than any flowering plant. Although, you know, I love my flowering plants and I have plenty of flowering plants, but these gold foliage things tend to last longer and offer color in the garden, you know, for a prolonged season. And a lot of them I'm going to show you are actually evergreen, so they'll be this color year round. The first one we'll talk about here is Touch of Gold Holly. I've talked about this plant many times. This is going to be a great plant in people's landscapes to offer that gold, you know, that pop of gold. This one will get 2 to 3 feet in height, maybe 3 to 4 feet in width, probably creep up higher than that over time if you let it. That's just how plants are. They don't stop growing, but easily maintainable between 2 and 3 feet. Perfect little dome shape on its own. You know, the dome will just get slightly larger over the years. Prune this thing whenever you want to prune it. All the new growth on it is gold like this. The interior foliage is slightly darker, and it actually adds a little bit of contrast on the plant itself. So this one's going to be a big seller, and you can see behind me, this nursery is all in on them. So let's move to the next thing. Next up is an example of one that will take part shade. This is Florida Sunshine Illicium. Shown this plant many times on the channel. This is just a fantastic plant. I've got one next to my shed at the house that's maybe 3 feet tall at this point. It's just a great plant. I mean, this color is this intensity 12 months out of the year. Obviously, the new growth on these gold plants, it's always going to be a little brighter than the older growth down in the bottom. This one tends to grow kind of, the new growth on it tends to be tall and sprawling, but down at the base it can get a little bit wider. Any kind of crazy limbs you get on them, you can cut off if you want to. But you can keep this plant as a little round shrub around 4 feet tall, or you can just allow it to grow. It has kind of a nice form just on its own. But again, super industrial plant for the part shade. I'm back in this big group of carex that I shot a full video on that I'll link up here in the corner. These are great for adding a bright splash of color into the garden. Actually, you can get green varieties as well that just, you know, are also fantastic additions in the garden. But specifically this Everest that I'm standing in right here and Everillo carex will add a tremendous amount of color into a part shade situation. And again, they're evergreen. So, you know, how can you miss with carex? So I got lucky and found two side by side. These are both plants that I have in my landscape. This is spider's web fatsia. This is a variegated fatsia. Has varying variegation on it during the season. So sometimes when it's actively growing, the new leaves can be almost white. And then as they mature, they'll mature to kind of a green center with typically a gold edge around them. But again, it's variable. You could go through this entire group of plants and you wouldn't match two up. So it's super, super interesting in that way. Some green leaves, some white leaves, some kind of gold leaves. Beautiful, beautiful plant. Again, this is another shade addition. They like well-drained soil, and so in my clay soils in Raleigh, North Carolina, I'm mounding them up a little bit, but this spider's web fatsia is a great, great addition. Of course, sunshine ligustrum. We're not going to do a gold foliage video without sunshine ligustrum. I have two of these in my landscape. These have been planted into these containers and basically have created little formal upright topiaries with them. These can be ball-shaped or pruned as little pyramids. You guys have seen these lots and lots of times on my channel, but you know, how can you miss with this? And it's going to grow in the sun or the part shade. For those of you who love conifers, there are a lot of great choices for gold foliage plants. I covered a juniper just recently. I'll link that video up here in the corner. That's a ground cover juniper. I happen to have this nightlight camiociferous in my front garden space, and man, is it a great performer. It's in the full sun. It's grown maybe 4 or 5 inches in the year that it's been in the ground. It's going to probably outgrow that space that I have it in the future, but I'll just be able to cut it in half, no problem. But this nightlight camiociferous, perfect plant for those of you who want a bright and showy conifer. This can go in the ground or is perfect for a container. This is a big, beautiful group of golden Oakland hollies. This is another one that I have in my landscape. I've got one of these in a container, and I have one of them in the ground as well, so either use is fine. It's going to get big over some length of time. This thing could probably end up 15 to 20 feet in height, kind of narrow. Obviously, it has a very upright, narrow growth habit. There are a lot of these gold hollies that have been released over the years. This golden Oakland holly to me is probably the most consistent. It has the most consistent variegation leaf after leaf after leaf, where a lot of the other gold upright hollies that have been released have patches of green and patches of gold, and lots of different variegations in the individual leaves and that kind of thing. But again, this one seemed to me is the brightest, and it's just a very full plant. I mean, the regular Oakland holly is one of the best screening plants you could possibly buy. This golden Oakland holly isn't far behind that. It will grow a little slower. Variegated plants tend to grow a little slower than their green counterparts, but this is a great border plant or screening plant. Good girl. All right, you're about ready to go back to Raleigh, aren't you? It's been a long trip. This has been a long trip. Okay, so Holly and I found a couple more in a greenhouse. One is this Mojo pittosporum, which I've talked about several times. I have 3 of these in my landscape. Just a fantastic choice in a part shade area. Perfect low mounding habit. You can probably keep this around 1 foot in height, up to 2 or 3 feet in height, and 3 to 4 feet in width, something like that. It'll eventually have kind of an insignificant flower, other than the fact that it's quite fragrant, and a great fragrance at that. It takes a couple years on these variegated ones for those flowers to start to show up. And then I found this lemon lime nandina. Lemon lime nandina is a great choice, great gold color in the landscape. It can take this plant, I've noticed, a year or 2 to really take on what it's going to be. Sometimes this plant will go in the ground and it's not that bright punch of color you think it's going to be. And then all of a sudden it really is. And it's worth waiting for, because this is a great performer. It has all the industrial characteristics of a nandina, where it would be difficult to kill. Plus, it has the gold new growth on it year round. I mean, it has some gold on the top of it year round. And it's a sterile cultivar, so it's not going to be a noxious weed like regular Nandina domestica is. So has a lot of great characteristics, but an almost, like I say, bulletproof plant. So here's 2 more. Let's jump to Raleigh and see a few more. Okay, all right. Back in Raleigh, I wanted to show you a few things that lose their leaves in the wintertime. I'm shooting this in October, so these aren't going to look that great here at the end of the season, but my Golden Falls redbud is a great example of a plant that can add gold color to the landscape. You're seeing a couple photos here of it, and it's kind of a peak color during the season. It also flowers, and then it has this weeping habit. So in the wintertime, even without leaves on it, it's quite beautiful. Another one I showed earlier in the season was this Little Honey oak leaf hydrangea. Great gold color on the foliage all season. Again, October, it's going to sleep. Another one of these gold additions that goes dormant and is going dormant now is this gold Weigela. Another example would be something like gold mound spirea. I don't have a gold mound spirea in my landscape, but again, it's going to leaf out in the spring, add a lot of gold contrast in the garden during the season, and then it actually has beautiful fall color as well. So let me show you about 3 more things in my landscape that still do look good here in October. This lemon coral sedum is just fantastic. It can be a little bit of a bully in the landscape. It's spreading into places I don't want it to spread to, but it's very easy to control, so I don't want to scare anybody off from it, but it will spread outside of the area that you put it in. Great container plant. Nothing can add this, this punch of gold any better, especially as a ground cover. I do have one more ground cover I'll show you though. The other ground cover is this Brigadoon St. John's wort. This is the least amount of color it's had all season. When it's actively growing, it's brighter. And so this is the dull version. every time this plant shows up in any angle in a video, everybody's asking down at the bottom what it is, but that's Brigadoon St. John's wort. It does flower. The flowers are kind of short-lived. Pollinators love them just like they do other St. John's wort, but it's really grown for this beautiful, vivid gold foliage. Last but not least, I'm going to cover this Miss Lemon abelia. This is a variegated plant, so we could, I guess, argue whether it's a true gold plant. But you can see here in the fall that all of the late season growth on this plant is bright, bright yellow. You have the creamy white variegation on the old growth. All the new growth is bright yellow. That's why this one's called Miss Lemon. And it is a super bright addition to my landscape space. It's also evergreen. These are hardy in like zone 6 to 9, and in zone 6 it'll thin out a little bit. But in 7B where I'm at and down to 9, it stays this full, blooms like crazy all summer. Flowers aren't particularly showy on a bright, white flower on a brightly colored plant like this, but pollinators love it. Great addition. So there's a lot of the gold plants that I like to use in the landscape. If you've got a gold plant that I didn't mention, or one of these that I did mention, tell me what your favorite one is in the description below, or below the description. Thank you guys for watching.